So, Daniel, I gather from speaking with you and watching your writings and your tweets, you don't feel this is going to be transitory inflation like we're hearing. Why? Why do you think that?
If we look at 2018 and 2019, before COVID, the COVID crisis, there were already important signs of inflationary pressures. We have seen, for example, that healthcare, education, insurance, fresh food, all those prices were rising significantly faster than what the headline CPI was showing, the headline Consumer Price Index. And after COVID 19, the massive increase in monetary stimulus added to the reopening of the economy is generating even further pricing pressures. So, as the Fed and the official statistics look at inflation on a yearly basis, we might see that official inflation does not rise massively maybe next year, but that the elevated levels of prices remain stubbornly high. That is the key factor to me. Also, the fact that inflation is rising much faster than real wages, because inflation in itself, we don't care about it. We care about it relative to the amount of money that we earn. And those things are not transitory. The massive money printing is generating a much higher level of inflation than what the official figures show.
And on that point, one of your tweets, you said you're not buying, at least fully, the supply chain narrative. You feel that this is simply currency debasement. How do you know that, or how do you get to that conclusion?
If we look at 2018 and 2019, there was overall a widespread level of overcapacity in most industries and most commodities. In 2020, throughout the crisis, massive liquidity injections and low interest rates have perpetuated overcapacity in the vast majority of sectors globally. So when you look at the price increase, it does not come from supply shortages, it does not come from supply chain disruptions, it comes from monetary debasement. There are some commodities that are rising faster because of some supply shortages, but the correlation in the rise in prices of commodities and goods and services is showing that it's a monetary effect. In fact, inflation is always a monetary effect. Oil prices go up. Why? Because more money is looking at scarce assets. No, so we need to pay attention to that because central banks are simply ignoring that fact.
When we talk about printing money, sometimes we have stimulus checks from the government. Other times it's the central banks who are doing it. Maybe somebody with your insight, what exactly is happening here? Who gets the blame on this?
Well, both government and the central bank are to blame, obviously. It might seem attractive from the citizen's viewpoint to receive a check that is paid with nothing, that is paid with debt and money printing. But what you see is that that check and that check's purchasing power is losing its ability to purchase goods and services, and it's burning down in your pocket. So the idea that the government gives you free money may seem appealing until you realize that they basically get it back via inflation. Inflation is the tax on the poor.
We had Lance Roberts on the show a couple of days ago. He was telling us about how this increase in the price of oil really has a knock-on effect, on the price of food, whether it's harvesting the food, processing it, whether it's transporting it, etc. He basically said when the price of oil goes up, you see a lot of other price of consumer goods go up as well. From your perspective, the oil expert, what kind of role does oil play here? And another question I had is, how come OPEC is able to artificially keep the price high if it's going to be passed on to us?
Yeah, those are very important questions because people tend to fail to understand that we basically are surrounded by oil. That that the cost of producing the food that we eat includes the cost of oil and the cost of natural gas, that around us we can see. We don't see them, but we have barrels of oil everywhere, in plastic, in coating, in the wax that goes to some of the food that is used for medicinal purposes, in so many different products. So what Lance was mentioning is absolutely right. Is that, as I explained in The Energy World is Flat, we eat a lot of oil in our day-to-day purchases. I think that the problem with OPEC is important, and I tell you why. Um, Oil prices have been following the rest of commodities, but there is an absolute reality, is that oil prices are creeping up, and the price of gas for consumers is rising massively at a moment in which there's more than 2.5 million barrels a day of overcapacity that is hidden out of the market by OPEC. The decision to maintain the supply cuts, both from OPEC and their new partners, Russia, is keeping the market artificially balanced. And it makes no sense, for a very simple reason. If oil prices generate that chain of spikes in prices, they can also generate an impact on the overall economy, and then it's like a boomerang. OPEC suffers because the economy suffers. Remember when oil prices went way above $100 a barrel before the crisis, and one of the things that they did was to accelerate the abrupt enter into a crisis of, for example, the consumer nations like the European Union.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point. We'll come back to it another day. Daniel Lacalle, Tresses, thank you.
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel, like my videos, leave your comments below, and keep defending freedom. Thank you very much.